an athlete who does way too much and it affects their productivity and their performance.
I found people that I talk to who do CrossFit, they will get so into it that they start doing it 6 days a week. And then on the 7th day, they have to run a 5K because they feel like there's something else to do.
ACL injuries is the first thing that actually comes to my mind. Working a lot on the girls' side, that is what frequently is thought of as the major reason for the ACL injury. And it hits close to home as my daughter Jamie tore her ACL about 4 months ago in the semifinals of the conference game. But first thing that comes is just doing a little bit too much, too often, obviously, but ACL injury.
So basically, it's just a person who becomes so obsessed with doing the actual activity that they're not looking at it from a scientific standpoint and realizing that when you take that day off and allow your muscles to rebuild, and even when you just have varied workouts. So, for example, depending on what your goal is, you're going to have a couple of training sessions throughout the week that are going to be really, really intensive, and then a couple of them that are probably just going through the motions. So you're practicing the muscle movement component of it, or if it's like a cycling or a running thing, you're elevating your heart rate, continuing to build your base, but you're giving your body the opportunity to recover after doing the really high-end work.
Another thing that comes to mind because I'm so nervous, is overtraining. You asked overtraining
and burnout.
And burnout parents. That's the second thing that comes to mind, is when the parents are too involved in their kids' sports lives, and so they're just looking for that extra edge to give their kid for something to happen, that little pot, of gold at the end of the rainbow.
I think the biggest part would be like emotional and mental. When I think of athlete burnout, the biggest thing I think of is mental. Although I think physical is a part of that too. So.
And then the third thing, is it okay to go back like
Yeah,
this?
absolutely.
The third thing that actually comes to mind is which now my mind's going in so many different directions, I lost the third one.
But probably just year-long, not proper rest, not scheduled timed rest, or scheduled basically. Like, you have to be proactive about scheduling rest and making sure it's coming at a good time and stuff like that. So.
Is that for kids, training, and especially younger kids today, your generation too, is that too much structured training. In other words, the kids don't go out and play just for the joy of it anymore, and I think that's a really a big part that we need to get back to. Even in organized training, there needs to be a lot more time of just free time, of just playing the game because we love the game and we have a passion for the game.
Probably people that aren't giving their body adequate rest in between like exercise days or actual exercise of the workout.
Fourth thing, so it's all coming back now. The fourth thing would be isolation or exclusivity in a sport that a kid is playing in. I think that what we're missing is more of these multi-sport athletes, and because there's so much competition to get to that next level, is that a lot of the overtraining is done in that one single sport. And I call it the thoroughbred industry. You watch a horse race, and these horses are absolutely just the best athletes, right? But they'll snap a leg like nothing, right? And I think a lot of that is because they're so exclusive to certain movements in a certain sport that we lose that cross-training aspect. So I think sometimes if you are focused on one sport, if you can go and in your off season just do something completely different, it can still be in the same sport, but it's the different kind of movement. It can really help the overall health and strength of the athlete.
I would tell them to rest, take a few days off. Your body needs to rest, no matter what level of training you're at. And some people just don't understand that.
Rest. Very first thing that comes to mind is rest. You just need to pull back on what they're doing, because it's not, when overtraining happens, it's not just physical, but it's also mental and emotional. You'll lose concentration as well.
as an athlete, I was always training, so on the one hand, you never really want to hear that, but on the other hand too, I think we're human, so it's natural. And I think it's like an individual basis too. You kind of need to know your athlete and know the whole of what's going on, not just emotionally, but physically, spiritually. I think there's a lot of different factors involved in that too. So if an athlete came to me and said, I'm burned out, my first question is, okay, is this somebody I have a good relationship with and I really trust about this, and I've seen their work ethic in the past? That's one thing I'm thinking. And then the other thing is, okay, so let's talk about this and see if we can come up with a plan to manage it better.
I think overtraining can also be a buzzword, and people get a little bit, oh, I'm overtrained, everything hurts, I have, worn out knees or this and that. So I think I'd probably be curious to know, okay, well, what does that mean? What do your workouts look like? What are you trying to accomplish? Why do you think that you're overtraining? So I think that there are probably a lot of questions that you ask before you can sort of figure out if that is the case.
I'd probably ask them, like, what basis they're saying that, because if they're only working out like 2-3 days a week, I doubt they'd be overtraining. So, a lot of times people working out 5-6 days a week, that'd be a pretty good case of overtraining. So I want to just feel out where they're at.
And the last thing we want to do is also lose the passion that a kid has for a sport. And so what I would do is I would go with rest right away. And it usually takes only a day or two for true and being reinvigorated to come back. But if it's more serious, we'll be able to tell from a physical standpoint. But mentally and emotionally, that can usually be gone in a few days. If it's more than that, then it's probably physically as well, and probably go a little bit longer. Yes.
They won't care at all.
No, I think that improper training is a serious issue.
I think it happens for sure. For me, I just loved playing sports so much that it never really was an issue. So there's a part of me that feels like I can't understand that in some senses.
So I think that people get set down, a hard and steady course of always doing the same things day in, day out. And maybe they neglect some of the important aspects that are also part of their sports.
Yeah, I do actually. I think a lot of times you got young guys coming in, all they care about is getting big and not doing the exercises right. So they'll just think that all I have to do is work out X amount of hours, X days a week, and they don't take into account that your body doesn't work that way. Like a lot of times they'll be working out same muscle groups, back-to-back days, things like that, where their body doesn't function. You need to give it rest, time, food. A lot of guys think if they cut down what they're eating to work out, your body needs calories to burn. So it's definitely a problem. I don't think people give it enough time and consideration.
So I think it's more helpful to give an example. So I guess I would say, take a look at a football player in the off season who is lifting all the time, lifting day in, day out, getting huge, getting really bulky. Well, the downside of that is that they lose their flexibility. They become really rigid, so maybe they'll be more injury prone when they come to a situation that requires a faster movement. Their body is just out of that practice.
It depends on where you're talking, at what level you're talking at.
Collegiate.
Collegiate? In some cases, yes. In some of the endurance type sports, yes. I could see swimming being overtraining.
I think for high school, I was actually just talking to a friend last night who coaches a high school lacrosse team out in Seattle, and she was saying that for athletes, they're all having like knee issues and this issue and that issue, and she thinks that a big part of it is because they come into the lacrosse season, they're just not fit. Like they're just not all around fit people who have like a holistic approach to their sport. It's more like it's lacrosse season, so here I go, I'm going to do it. But they don't do the strength training, they don't do the stretching, they don't do the other pieces that are part of it. They come into it cold. Maybe they have their raw athletic skill, but not building that foundation is going to lead to issues, I think.
Variety.
I watch what they swim. I watch how they compete, what they do for weightlifting, what they do for training, and I have them in a regimen throughout the season as to what level they're doing and how much.
I guess I'm kind of in a unique position because I don't have athletes. I would say what I do have, I have students that I teach yoga to on a really regular basis, and for them, a really important piece of it is, pay attention as you're practicing to the parts of your body that you know are maybe like tender from an old injury, or you just kind of chronically always had an issue, and like kind of pay attention to those things. And then when you're doing moves where it's going to be more vulnerable, it's going to be in a more vulnerable position, like maybe ease off a little bit, like feel it out. And if you notice that there's like a tearing, pulling kind of sensation, like that's how you know to back off. But there's also a difference between like tearing, pulling, and like this is like a good working through it kind of sensation.
I'll give you a perfect example. So what we did for this winter in regard to the women's soccer team is that we had strength training. Well, first of all, we had an injury prevention protocol. That was a big part of their winter training. So we really want to hit that because, as I mentioned, the first thing that came to mind was ACL. So then we mixed that up with a long distance cardio training. Then we also mixed that up with a rest and recovery workout. We did strength, and we did also skill work. And what we did is basically every other day we mixed up, so there was good variety between all the workouts. So we're working our bodies in a lot of different ways. So keeping variety and then keeping it within an hour's workout. So the intensity of the workout, if it's there, everything that we want to do to benefit and max out can be done. But it wasn't the same training. It literally changed every 3 to 4 days. It was a different focus. So we didn't get mentally sort of bored with the workout, but also physically it affected our bodies differently.
So I think just really being aware of your body, and like, we all know, like, I have super weak, quads, or I'm really weak in my upper body. So I think that it's important to know yourself, be realistic about what your limitations are, and then also be realistic about what your goals should be to try to improve upon those things and not just continue to improve upon the things that you're already good at. So I think that sometimes overuse injuries occur, when people don't take a holistic approach to what they're trying to do. They just hammer away at the thing that they're really, really good at.
For me, I'd probably make sure I'm getting at least 2 rest days a week. I mean, no one should be lifting 7 days a week. Maybe even if you're a competitive bodybuilder, you're just giving yourself time. Focus on giving yourself a lot of good sources of calories, because that way your body can recover, and getting enough sleep. It's tough at college. I know myself, I'm probably averaging 5 hours a day, but if you're trying to really better yourself physically and at a fitness level, you need that sleep so your body can recover. So I'd probably do that.
The biggest thing that I have noticed in cyclists in particular, I'm on a racing team, and some of them will just get so entrenched in their training and themselves that they just lose a balanced perspective about life and being a whole full human being. I think that it's possible to train hard and train well, but to do that part of your day and then say that was good enough, like I did what I could do today, I'm going to let that be, and then I'm going to do what I can do tomorrow.
You can see psychological, you can see physical as far as fatigue in their face, you can see emotional depression. Sometimes in the effort that they put in, they're not getting the results that they want, and that can lead to show that they're overtraining.
I would say the very first thing that comes up is a lack of passion. Once you see that, and the lack of passion, obviously we start to lose the fun aspect. I think that's why everyone, no matter your age, sort of got involved in sports in the first place. It's because I just love to play. And when it starts to come overtraining, and I really think of the other term that you used was burnout, is that when the passion starts to get depleted and start to come down, that's probably the very first sign. Lack of passion, then comes a lack of effort, a lack of interest, a lack of commitment.
I don't think I know as much as I probably should. I kind of just go off when my body tells me I should stop. I'm pretty careful about not overtraining, but I feel like if I were to get into myself a situation where I was overtraining, I wouldn't be like too aware of what psychological indicators there are. So that definitely sounds like something interesting to know.
Okay. Are you? This will be the introduction.
Yeah, it will.
Don't worry, guys. It's not as hard as it looks. It is.
Flex it.
Nah, I'm good. Can I put these down?
No. Shoulder.
Shoulders.
press.
Oh, we do. All right.
What comes to mind when you hear the terms overtraining and burnout?
Okay, no, I'm just